There's a lot to unpack when it comes to the maps. We have Dr. Sam Nelson, the political science and public information chair from the University of Toledo with us. We've been watching lawmakers go back and forth for months here on the political maps after voters said they were the ones that wanted change. So what do you think this means? Does it set the stage for redistricting in the future here in Ohio?
I think we're going to see this kind of back and forth over the next couple of cycles. And the way that the law is set up, we could be back at this just 4 years from now.
Now, we're seeing a lot of states redrawing political districts, some successfully. But why do you think things are such a mess right now here in Ohio?
Well, I think it's that we have the referendum that passed that set new rules for how this was going to be done. But Republicans having large majorities in the state legislature, they don't really want to follow those rules because they're not advantageous for Republicans.
If we see this primary get pushed or split, there are a lot of options on the table right now. What does that look like for the Ohio Elections Board, who has to scramble and change everything?
I think it's a lot harder to split it than it is to postpone it. Split it will cost more money, and the turnout in the second primary election will be much lower, most likely, than if you just delay the primaries across the board.
Now, if you are an average viewer out there, you know, politics might sound like noise, especially when we're diving deep into something like redistricting, political lines and maps. So why should the average voter care?
Well, the referendum on redistricting passed by a large bipartisan majority, so Democrats and Republicans wanted the state to do districting according to those rules. So that's one interest. And fair districts, competitive districts, reduce corruption and increase political accountability so that legislators have to work for the voters more closely rather than working for themselves.
And it's been talked about once before that the possibility of bringing in a party that is nonpartisan in the future. Do you think that that could happen if we continue to see, as you mentioned, this cycle?
I think we might, because when you look at some other states, Democrats are redistricting in Illinois and New York in ways that advantage Democrats, and Republicans are trying in states that they control. And it's a bit of an arms race when you do these kind of gerrymanders, and it could be that eventually we'll settle on some kind of a solution, kind of gerrymander reduction agreement, or some sort of federal legislation to try to get a handle on this so that we have a more neutral process for drawing these districts.
Yeah, you know, you bring up a good point. It seems like every state's kind of doing their own thing right now, but ultimately, especially when it comes to the congressional maps, that has an impact across the entire nation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you see that Democrats have picked up some congressional seats, likely in New York and Illinois. Maps have been struck down in Ohio and North Carolina. And so there's a lot of pushing and shoving going on. You know, ultimately, we don't have very competitive elections for, say, the House of Representatives in the state of Ohio. They've been the same for a decade and likely to be the same under new maps are really stable. And that makes for low turnout elections, low interest elections. Voters will tend to tune them out if they don't have a lot of impact on who wins those races.
Well, we really appreciate your insight this afternoon, Professor. Thank you.
Thanks.